see you again. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everybody's here, Monica?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Audit Committee for March 23rd of 2023. So I think the first thing we need to do is do a roll call.
Yeah. Calling roll, Audit Committee Chairman Michael Abuzarol,
Here?
Trevor McLear,
Here.
Salvador Tallarico,
Here.
Lee Tucker,
Here.
and County Executive Chris Ronayne.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. We have to do a couple of weird things today, or not weird, different things today. So first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to invite Keith to actually come up and sit here at the Audit Committee group of folks. So Keith is, as a lot of people know, he's I don't know what terminology is. He's a longtime Audit Committee member awaiting hopefully a reappointment from the county executive. And so we actually have an agenda item to talk a little bit about the reappointment and the vacancy, but I wanted to make sure that Keith had a chance to come up here. I don't believe Keith can vote today on anything, or he can?
No, sure, if I could just elaborate a little bit. There is a revised code provision that allows a member of a body to hold over until they're successfully appointed. Out of the abundance of caution, the charter, I didn't see a corporation. Conservative and cautious, I advise count Keith towards a quorum voting for purposes of our obligations to the law.
Okay. But his input is certainly required and hopefully will be provided, so.
And Mr. Chair, as a newcomer, first I'll ask just question, point of order. If appropriate, I can elaborate on this particular matter if you'd like.
You want to wait until we get to?
That works.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. So the next item, the public comment related to items on the agenda. Anybody from the public want to provide any comments? I don't think we have anybody from the public here. So we do want to add a couple of items to, I'm not sure if it's formally to the agenda, or at least we want to talk about them today. One is the approval for the audit committee on a travel request. And then also Monica, to talk a little bit about the teammate project, which is something that her department is doing. So Monica, maybe we can do that a little bit further on.
Absolutely,
Okay, just remind me, because.
will do.
So item 4, so the introductions and the welcome to the new county executive. So so maybe we could do a quick introduction of at least the private citizens. I know you came around and said hello, but so I'm Micah Boosterall. I'm the chair of the audit committee. I've been on the audit committee now for I think 6 or 7 years, and I've been chairing it for about 5 years now. So glad to be here.
I'm Sal Tallarico. We don't know how many years I've been on the audit committee, but I think it's about 4 or 5, maybe. This will be your fourth year. Thank you, Monica. Excited to be here and to meet you and the whole new administration. So and work, of course, with the folks that have been here and done a great job.
So Keith Libman, I think that my term on the committee has been slotted somewhere between where Mike was and Sal joining us, and appreciate the invitation to participate today, and look forward to whatever the future.
Do you know everybody else?
I do.
Is there any?
Yeah.
All right.
Unless anybody else wants to. Well, I just want to say thanks. It's good to be a part of this committee. I've had a good overview of it from Monica, but I'm looking forward to hearing it from the chair and the board members. And again, I'll elaborate further, but one of the good news stories of this board is that it seems that things are going well. So where we focus some of our attention on places that needed some immediate appointment attention. So we'll get back to keeping this one full. Thanks.
Thank you. And just a little bit, so the way that the, oh, sure.
I should have, Monica, apologize, Chair. I didn't know that she hadn't already interfaced, but I should have introduced Katie Gallagher, who's our Chief Operations Officer, who is here with me, but will also be occasionally in my stead, and also, if that's appropriate. And Brendan Doyle, who I think you know, came over from council, short walk over to administration, but works with me as special counsel, and Catherine Tatakchik, you know. So thank you.
And just a couple additional statements about the audit committee. So although we are an independent body from the county, which is why we have 4 private citizens appointed to the committee, it's always been our approach to work very closely with the county executive and the county council. So if there's anything that you think that the work that we're doing or internal audit is performing that would assist you in your position as county executive, please just let Monica, myself, or anybody on the committee know. So we're here to help. So item 5, the election of the chairperson. So this is the meeting where we have to elect the chair of the audit committee for 2023. So I think we need nominations for the position, and then we'd have to take a vote on that.
I'd move to nominate Michael Boosterall as chair.
Second.
No discussion? No. So if there's no discussion on the appointment, we need a vote? Is that how it works? So all in favor of appointing Micah Boosterall to chair the audit committee for 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And thanks for the confidence in electing me to this position for another year. Item 6, so we need a motion to approve the minutes for the December 8th, 2022 audit committee meeting.
Second.
So all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Perfect, thank you. So executive session, I'm going to defer the executive session to the end of the meeting. Item 8, the approval of the Audit Committee 2023 meeting schedule. So we do have in your packet of stuff the suggested meeting schedule for 2023. We may want to consider, based upon, I think, maybe it was your response about adjusting the meeting in June. So do we want to consider doing that, or do we want to keep the schedule? I mean, I'd like to try to accommodate, if we possibly can, all the Audit Committee members, so.
If I may make a recommendation, can we just keep it the same as now? Once we are fully on board with the new appointed, I'm sure hopefully by June, we will have another body appointed. So then we can readjust at that time. Because if we readjust now for one, then we may have to readjust again later for that other committee member that hopefully will join us before that time.
So I'm retired and flexible, so that might be okay with me, but for those of you that are working, is it better to at least adjust it now or wait a little bit? I'll leave it up to the rest of the group. You guys are much busier than I am.
Right now, June looks good except for that week for me. So we can wait. How long do you think that would be? About a month, two?
About a month or two. If I see that appointment's not running, you know, I will just do as I normally do, reach out to you, as we already know your schedule is blocked that
The only
day.
thing I would point out is, having gone through twice before, it does sometimes take a bit of time because of council schedule, having to appear before county council, and you may find even if things are trending towards having the full complement by June, it may not happen much in advance of that. I don't mean to presuppose, but I've just seen that process, so.
Okay. Well, certainly, whatever pleases you, I can, you know, adjust so we can, after this meeting, would you like me to just send out another poll and see when other people are available, other dates?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'd be better just to adjust it for now, and hopefully the new member could.
Okay.
I'd much rather have the existing members be able to make it than.
Not a
obviously the
problem
new
at all.
members.
Certainly can do that.
Okay. So I think maybe here, Monica, let's insert the approval for the travel. Is this a good place to do it?
Sure. So in accordance with the new policy that went into effect at the end of last year, I believe, or actually it was the meeting before. Can't remember, make so many different policy changes these days. But if there's any travel that will be associated with the training that has been already approved. So we already have budget dollars approved for training. So all these dollars are already approved. So it's not a dollar impact, but more or less just an approval to be in compliance with the policy. We have 2 members that we are proposing attend the annual conference for the Association of Local Governmental Auditors. That proposal is before you. It's the last page in your packet. You know, pretty much the 2023 ALGA conference is being held in Boston, and it has been historically the department's mandate that we typically will send 2 people to this training, and as well as various other conferences. The cost of the attendance has traditionally been reflected in the annual budget as it is currently. Some of the potential benefits, they are offering a remote option. So there are some of our team that are going to be attending this virtually. However, what we have found is what they are doing is certain classes are not offered if you're virtual, and so one of the team members definitely wants to attend a workshop that's not offered virtually, and then they still have opportunity to schedule their training, but there's definitely one workshop that one of the team members would like to attend that's not going to be held virtually. The other potential benefits is that it allows for a hands-on experience. It also allows the expansion of department resources through in-person networking. You know, remote work is great, remote training is great, but that extra thing of meeting somebody, networking, and reaching out. I can't tell you the number of times I've been very blessed throughout my 20-plus year career to be able to reach out to a colleague that I met at a conference and say, hey, what are you doing here? How are you doing this? What do you think? And it has really helped extend my resource. And so we're looking to come back and do that. And again, this is the Association of Local Government Auditors, which is one of the premier professional associations for us to be in. So it's very applicable to the work that we do. The total cost for travel is negligible. It's $740 for one, $988 for another. The difference is the amount of days for the travel. One is going to be attending a workshop on a day that extends his stay. So knowledgeable travel expense, we definitely have it in the budget, just need your approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Okay. Second. So all in favor of approving the travel request as presented by the director, say aye.
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 Okay, great, thank you. And you want to talk a little bit about teammate?
Sure, I can talk about that now. This item will actually come to you in more detail during our budget time, which will be at the June meeting. However, as you have been made aware previously, Teammate keeps saying they're going to be sunsetting the system that we're currently on. What we have also a problem with every year is being able to renew the license with Teammate because of a IG requirement. Sorry, Alexa. Alexa's been working with us and before her, Mark worked with us on this. But we're going to be moving from our vendor of Walters Chlor. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah, Walters Chlor to Carasoft. So what we have found, Josh has been great in finding a kind of avenue alternative for us to go and to still keep our system, but we will have to upgrade to the new version of the system, which we were going to have to do anyway, in order to solve the vendor issue, but also to make sure that we can keep working with the system that we have. And we plan to do that hopefully at the end of the year is what we're trying to schedule it for. But we will need additional budget dollars to do that. But when I say additional, it's just an allocation. So there is no new money needed. We will be moving some dollars around. But I just wanted to put it out to you guys now so that we could have it on the agenda for next meeting, for us to be able to do the conversion to the next level of Teammate for the reasons of ensuring our continuation of ability to document our work and track our work. This is our primary system. We do our risk assessment, all of this in this software, so it's our primary support system for the work that we do.
So I had a question. So, and jog my memory on this. So when the audit committee approved the budget for '23, and then the county executive and county council did we have money in there for this Teammate project?
You had money in there for our renewal.
Okay.
But so the way the categories go now, they're very slim, right? There's like 3 categories you can put money into now. But in that dollar of software, where that software is, we also have, and we'll be talking about this later, the money for the ITGC assessment. That has come in lower than what we expect, so we can definitely shift some dollars, and it wouldn't be something that needs to go through the executive's office because it's in the same category. So that would be just at the approval level for you to allocate, take money away from the ITGC review and allocate it to this. And it's about, what is it, a $20,000 difference? Just under $20,000.
So is that a one-time cost in '23 that potentially goes away in '24?
It's a one-time cost, but we'll have renewal costs as we have currently each year, but those renewal costs are actually going to be less than what we have now as our renewal costs, so definitely. Well, I was going to formally present it in June, but I've kind of given you all of the information that you need, so it's totally up. I just wanted to mention it to get it on the agenda for June, but we would definitely appreciate it. That is very sufficient.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the reallocation of the budget.
Second.
So all in favor of approving the proposed reallocation as recommended by the director, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, so we're on to old business. So here's item A, the member reappointment and vacancy. So have we talked enough about the reappointment? Is that, okay. So then in addition to that, we have a vacancy. So,
Right.
so Yvette had resigned, Yvette too, as I know you know, has resigned late last year from the audit committee
Yes, in December, right before the meeting.
in December. So somebody needs to be appointed to fulfill the remainder of her term. You had asked for some recommendations. I had provided an individual to Zoe, somebody who I don't know personally, but he's a professor at Cleveland State, and he's been interested, so
Excellent.
just for your consideration.
Terrific. And if there's other members of the board or team here that's got additional interested persons, we're always taking names, and we keep them even if in the event of, there's another vacancy. But my goal will be to expeditiously fill all the seats. I recognize the value of quorum. Can't get anywhere without it. And we'll very much be moving on that front. I did also speak with Zoe this week, who is, for those who don't know, Zoe Taskas is handling our boards and commissions. So we talked both about the vacancy and the reappoint. And subject to a conversation I'm going to have on the reappoint, we're positively inclined to move that quickly. And also appreciated the comments about the pace, and wouldn't put it all on council. It's just a process, but I think I'm sure our council senior leadership staff team understands that this would be a priority to move this quickly through the docket. So I guess we'll get it done. We'll move it as fast as we can, and hopefully be full board on, if not next meeting, the meeting after. Thanks.
Thank you. And most of us think he should be reappointed. by the way.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. So item B, the follow-up items from the fourth quarter meeting. So I know county, there's like a packet of stuff here, and so this document is just a kind of a summary of the follow-up items that have been discussed at the audit committee meeting.
Is it on the screen? Yeah, there we go. It's on the screen. Okay, so we're at the follow-up items from the fourth quarter meeting. Gonna go through these as quickly as we can. So we have our normal follow-up item, which is the bank reconciliation. That's actually going to be an agenda item. It's gonna be agenda item 9E. We also have additional follow-up relative to the bank reconciliation, which was to provide a copy of the scope of service with the consultant and a timeline for the upcoming work to the committee. That was assigned to Lee, and she did provide such to the audit committee on 12/14/22 via email. Any questions or concerns relative to that from the members of the committee? Okay, great. The next item was assigned to myself and Alexa Biller, the IG. It's the audit committee requested presentation from the OIG relative to their role and responsibility. That's going to be on today's agenda at item number 10E. The next item is assigned to myself and Mark at the prosecutor's office, Mark Monson, committee to readdress recommended revision to the Cuyahoga County Charter related to unrestricted access to records. That's going to be agenda item 9F that we will talk about that. The next item has been kind of on this follow-up for a long time, but it's hopefully going to be resolved with today, when we look at the audit plan. It was a review of the OIG Loan Development Update Report by DIA as a follow-up to inquiry made by the council when we did a presentation to them. The OIG they did an update, but has decided not to reissue their report. But we believe that any concerns will be considered during our audit planned for the 2023 year. So that's going to be agenda item 10H. So we will address any concerns the council may have had in our review when we scope out that work for our 2023 audit plan, if the committee so pleases to approve that plan later today at 10H. Update audit manual for policy approved at the December 8th meeting, which was relative to the remote work for the department. Those updates were made. There should be a copy of that insert of the update to the audit manual in your meeting materials. Any questions, concerns relative to that? Policy was appropriately updated. Okay, great. Management update on the 2021 financial audit findings. At our last meeting, we did have management's update. However, the responses relative to IT were not discussed at that time. Subsequent to the meeting, the findings were requested to be forwarded to the committee. Such was forwarded to the audit committee on January 5th of 2023. Did any committee members have any concerns, need any further discussion relative to those items? I don't think there were any new ones from prior year, and you understood the management's responses. Great. We're currently working with Clark Schaefer now on the new IT GC review that they do for the audit, and so we're supporting them in that efforts, and that's progressing pretty well. Audit committee member vacancy and reappointment. We just went over that agenda item. Thank you so much, Mr. Executive. The next item is the PRC scope limitation. There were specific comments that the chair requested be reflected in the minutes, as well as the drafting of a letter to the PRC in response to their denial of our public records requests. The draft was sent to Mark Monson. He actually responded back, and the draft was sent to the committee. There was some suggestions made, some recommendations made by Sal. Those recommendations have been included in your audit packet. I just wanted to make sure the committee, everyone in the committee was good with the recommendations that were made by Sal for revision, and that you so indicate such at this meeting that it is okay for me to send that out to Sal.
So,
Out to the PRC, sorry.
I'd like to have just a brief discussion on this topic. And I'm okay with the suggested language by Sal, if that's what the audit committee wants to do. I guess but I was also okay with the original language that was in the email because of the frustration that the lack of interaction, I guess, with the PRC has caused in regards to trying to complete the audit, as well as the fact, at least from my perspective, that the information is not being provided by the PRC to allow internal audit to do their work. I mean, it is publicly available records, and so from my perspective, because of both aspects of it, I thought that the email probably needed to be a little bit more direct. But I'm certainly okay with the suggested language by Sal. But
Mr. Chairman, I just thought that it was accurate. The original language was accurate. I just felt that interdepartmentally, we just need to get along and move forward in a positive manner. So I thought that the scaled-down version, and especially emphasizing the committee hopes that the DIA and PRC can collaborate on matters in the future. I think it's better than to continue to have that friction. It's just not necessary.
If I may, I'm not going to quibble about the language in the communication, but I am going to weigh in many years of audit experience. I've learned the more entrenched somebody is about not giving me information that I request, the more I want it, the more I'm, as an auditor, would be concerned about withholding information. And and I respect Sal's approach to the written communication. I often write things and then edit them before I send them. But I don't think the pressure should be removed from providing the audit department with what it requests.
I mean, Mr. Chair, I know we talked about this, I think, at the last meeting or the prior meeting before that, but, I mean, the PRC, I believe, is wrong. I think anyone can request a public record, doesn't matter what their job is, and so I'm okay with either one. We're on record disagreeing with their denial because of Monica's asking under her being the director of internal audit, so I really want to know which one we send.
All right, so let's, if everybody's okay, let's send the one that's been revised by Sal. I guess these comments are sitting in YouTube anyway, so hopefully the message will get across. And I guess the hope is as we get to talk about the changes to the charter, it really becomes more and more important as we are continuing to deal with scope limitations and lack of accessibility to information, that we really strongly consider what's being proposed for the charter, because I think that's going to be one potential solution toward what we're currently encountering, which is, you know, just kind of lack of cooperation with what internal audit is charged to do, and ultimately what the audit committee is responsible for performing.
It was definitely something new in their argument, that saying because of her role as the director, basically, she couldn't ask for public records. That was the first one that I've heard working in government for the last almost 2 decades, so that was an interesting denial.
Mr. Chair, just as a new member and was pointed out to me, a non-voting member, how much interface feedback do you want from me? I ask that seriously. I don't know what my predecessor's role was, but I just have a comment on this if it's appropriate as a non-voting member to offer comment. It's more a question actually now that I think about it. Just, is this a matter we've talked about with our law department, or, I mean, I just wonder, when you talk, and what I'm getting into both is the PRC, but also the charter changes, and the spirit of it is not to check this body's work, to find a body internal that can be helpful to Monica and the team. So I would ask that also the charter review. Has the law department done much interface with you?
So we have legal appointment with the prosecutor's
board,
office,
yeah.
but we've not. And during our conversation, Katie, yourself, and I do think that as we go forward with the county charter revisions, that it's appropriate if Laura were able to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
If we can get the support of as much support as we can get for a charter revision.
It goes to the point about the spirit of interagency work. And I know that we've got to continue. We've got some capacity limits right now, just in building back up the law department. But I would say that in the future, FI and council can offer that to this body to help with these matters, at least sort them out. What's been the history? Not to referee it, but really just to be helpful in the policy development.
Thanks, we appreciate that. We appreciate that offer.
Sure thing.
Okay? So I will send it as per Sal's recommendations, and that will go out today. All right, wonderful. Have that behind us. The next item for the follow-up was to document the AC rationale for deferral of the jail operations audit. That was done and addressed in the annual audit plan report that was included in your packets, and which will be discussed at item 10F. As a reminder of that, there has been significant focus and oversight on this, and the committee is just waiting for that oversight to kind of get to a steady state, and to ensure that the availability of personnel for work that we may need to do as well. So that's discussed in that memo. In the audit plan report, sorry. The next item is the HR employee payroll review. So to refresh your memory, at the last audit committee meeting, Chairman Abuzarol asked that I present the HR employee payroll review. At that meeting, I told you I had recommended that a focus group be put together to be able to come up with a internal process for the Cuyahoga County relative to recoveries of items that may result in recovery. I'll just say that. Payroll is just one item that can result in recovery, but there are others. So that focus group actually has come up with a deliverable. They actually drafted, Lee was part of that. It was Lee,
That's smart.
Pat Smock, and gosh, my memory. But we did work with someone from law. Greg Huth was the executive sponsor of this. And so we have come up with a policy internally, and I'm just facilitating, so I'm not creating policy, I'm just facilitating. But they came up with a policy, a procedure, a process that they are currently following, and there's a test case of this currently with a situation that they have, and they're seeing how this process follows. The good thing about this process is that we also collaborated with the AOS office, and that policy involves how to notify them and what way in which they would like us to do that in order to ensure that recoveries that are not actually collected by us at least get brought to their attention. So it does cover that. As a result of this, also what we identified was the need for a second focus group for the process to prevent, not just after, the horse is out the gate, what do we do, but how do we keep the horse from getting out the gate? And so that focus group has started, and I think Lee and Pat and myself will be working towards developing and enhancing controls relative to the items that create recovery issues. So look for something from us, in the future. I don't know how near, because it's
Probably pretty near. We
Pretty near.
had a conversation with IT to help us develop some reports that the APO officers could use in reviewing payroll to make sure that the numbers appear accurate, and some extra checks and steps that they could take
okay, wonderful.
mitigate this type of issue.
Wonderful. So the organization is, trying to address this specific issue with revisions to internal policy and procedure. As it relates to the actual exceptions that we found, the findings where there were employees that were overpaid, so the collection of those overpayments, the new executive team has requested time to get up to speed on that overpayment concern. Katie, did you want to offer anything at this time relative to how the county, whether or not the county intends to go and collect those payments? Also, I think the other concern was the 100% review. We only did a sample. We came up with these, and given the error rate in which we found, there's a recommendation that there be 100% review done. So I know that, like I said, they are trying to get up to speed on this overpayment concern. So I'm not sure if you have anything to offer now or not.
Thank you. Katie Gallagher from the Executive's Office. So discussing this with the HR team and IT, the conversion for the new system didn't happen until April of last year. So I know you mentioned 100% audit of last year. The thing I'm concerned of is if there wasn't 100% audit, we'd be auditing two different systems. With a conversion of any huge system like ERP, there's going to take a learning curve for the staff. So I would say that if we are going to do an audit of last year, it would be scaled to just the last quarter. Thank you.
Any questions?
So I think the discussion was, and it's going to go back to those comments, it wasn't just looking at 100% for 1 year, it was actually going back and looking at an additional year. So, because I think you did 2 years before conversion, right? In your
We did 2020, which was where the AOS actually had the finding. They had that one finding that showed up in the audit report that they issued. And as a result, we went to look to see if there were others, and we used sampling methodology, and we did find some other overpayments in that 2020. We did not look at 2021, we did not look at 2022.
So there's 2020, there's 2021, and then the new system was put in place in 2022?
Correct.
Okay, so you're proposing to do an audit of the fourth quarter of '21?
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that's acceptable or not, I don't know what type of authority we have on this one, but, I mean, as everybody know, as both, I'm sure both of you know, filing for recoveries are, the whole idea here is to try to avoid filing for recoveries, and I think what the one thing you want to avoid is having the auditor state coming in here and deciding to do those years because of the error rate that was identified and the potential additional risk of what occurred happening for a potential of an additional year. So I think doing one, I guess hopefully maybe if you decide to do 1 quarter and depending upon the results of that, you may want to consider kind of expanding that, but that's certainly a management decision. Any other? So, okay.
Okay. All right. Next and last item for follow-ups is recommendation to carbon copy all department heads on the year-end issue tracker memo that was made by Trevor. Annually, we send out a memorandum stating what our results are to the executive and as it relates to the work done and those items that may not have been resolved. That's the whole idea, is to make them aware of items that maybe are not being resolved in a timely manner. And so the recommendation was to include our department heads, and we have done that. That memo was distributed on February 24th.
So any other questions to Monica regarding the follow-up items? Okay, thank you. So item C, the bank reconciliation. So we'll ask Lee to do an update, and just for the county executive and for Kate. So this has been a long-standing issue here with the county. I'm sure Monica has talked to you about this thing. And so as we all know from our years of working in government, not being able to reconcile cash is a terrible internal control weakness. I could use other terminologies that go along with it. So Lee's made some great progress in the time that she's been here in trying to get them current. I think you're getting closer to being current. I know this is also potentially impacting maybe impacting the timing of the financial statements for 2022. So improvement has been made, but there's still more that needs to be done to make sure that this is being done in accordance with appropriate bank reconciliation processes and procedures, which is primarily just doing them timely and making sure that they're done accurately. So
I'm happy to say that all but one account is reconciled through February of 2023. The one remaining account, we're currently reconciling the payroll account, and we're currently reconciling January of 2023. So I think the team has made great progress towards that. I asked them for the thoughts on when they could have the payroll account reconciled fully through February 2023. They state tomorrow, but I'm going to be a little bit cautious with that, and I would say by the end of next week, so by the end of this month, we will have February 2023 fully reconciled. So as you know, we're always a month in arrears, so we should be on February 2023, but I have a little concern with payroll because we're struggling with payroll each and every month, and it took us a lot of time to get where we are today because the last report that I sent out, we were only reconciled through November. I had all hands on deck, come in, work through the weekends, work extended hours. We shouldn't have to do that. So hopefully now that we're caught up, we can remain caught up because that is the big issue, is remaining caught up. Some of the issues that we've had in the past, and hopefully we're kind of pushing through this, is staffing. Once we're fully staffed, we might lose a member or two, but not only did we lose staff in fiscal, Treasury also lost staff. So we've been kind of going in, helping them post transactions. We should not be posting transactions because we're actually doing the reconciliation. So it's a little bit of something that we don't want to continue to do. We want their team to do it, but they don't have the resources. They lost their treasury manager, as well as they lost a staff, it's not a staff account, I think it's a fiscal specialist. So they lost 2 key members. They did hire someone last month in January. 2 months ago, and they hired someone in January, but they're still down a resource. So hopefully when they get their resources all up and running, we won't have any additional delays because we do reconcile transactions every day. We reconcile about 10,000 transactions each month. We currently have 107 transactions that are basically stale dated. So that's transactions that are from July 2022 through December of 2022. We know what they are. They haven't been posted to our books. Most of those transactions are adjustments that were posted incorrectly by Treasury. They were posted backwards. We have some issues with MICR lines, which is basically the encoding on the bottom of the checks. We printed them out of one account, the MICR line on the bottom of the checks, printed from a different account, not sure how that happened. It's not huge, but there are transactions. And then we have some interest payments that haven't been posted correctly. And another issue that we're facing that we kind of help Treasury with is reaching out to the various departments when they take a transaction to the bank and they haven't posted it on our books. That's a timing issue, but it becomes a follow-up issue when it's more than a day or two, because a day or two would be a timing issue. When you're talking about weeks or a prior month, then that's something that we have to follow up. Where's your transaction? We are working through that, but that is part of the transactions that are still dated from July through December. So hopefully we'll have that cleaned up by the end of this month, which is March. So we actually close our books the 5th business day of the following month. So in theory, it needs to be cleaned up by, I don't know what the 5th business day, but let's call it April 5th. Hopefully we can have that cleaned up by April 5th so that we are truly current with no stale dated items. So I'm not saying that we have unidentified items, they're just items that are stale dated. So they're beyond 1 month, 30 days. So are there any questions at this point beyond that?
And so Lee, in regards to the current audit for 2022, that they'll have the reconciliations that they need.
Because what they're gonna ask for is the end of the year, and they usually ask for the prior month. I'm sorry, the subsequent month, so which would be January. So we're all reconciled through, of course, December 22, and we're all reconciled through January of 2023.
So that should not be a factor in terms of holding up the audit this year.
And of course, everybody knows, we did the write-off in August of the I believe it was $2.2 million. So, any questions regarding the bank audit?
A question, Lee, first of all, thanks for getting us up to date. The items that you said are open, those are reconciling items. You know what they are.
Correct.
You're just hoping to, well, not hoping, but you're waiting to clear them up.
Correct.
Okay.
So again, we don't have any items that are unidentified. All of our items have been identified. We just have to post them to make sure they're corrected and reflected on our books appropriately.
Just want to make a comment primarily for the benefit of the county executive and any new members of his team that have not been part of these discussions about bank reconciliations for as long as any of us have been on this committee. There, in the old county governance system, was carried forward a roughly $2 million unreconciled balance that, in spite of representations, which I was comfortable with, that all attempts to reconcile had been made, nobody could determine what it was, and then ultimately led to the write-off because there was the county's books should reflect proper reconciled balance. But that's largely why this committee has taken a somewhat outsized interest in something that might seem as mundane as bank reconciliations, because of our commitment that that kind of condition just should never happen again.
That was a 12-year at least carry.
Something like that.
And it continued to be an issue in the audit report.
So Lee, the question that I have is, it was my understanding that the consultant was kind of waiting for you to get current on the reconciliations,
Correct.
which it now sounds like you're
We're-
as current as ever.
And
could
so,
you-
yeah, and they were gonna come in March and provide some additional training. We still have, our meetings like every week, but they're trying to come in on June 26th through the 30th. If their schedule allows, they may try to come in the last week of May, which is the week of, Memorial Day, but it's May 30th through, I think it was June 1, if I'm not mistaken, to provide some additional training. So when they come out, we're gonna have them sit with Treasury as well, to give them some ideas on how to, improve their processes.
So is that the remaining deliverable from the consultant? Are they doing any other?
No, they're
what-
doing some additional work, but that is the remaining deliverable as far as the CTM module is concerned.
But for so in regards to the bank reconciliation.
Correct, yes.
Is that the last?
That's the remaining,
so-
yep.
So any reports that they were supposed to design to help you kind of match? I forgot all that they were supposed to do. I read the email. So
They were supposed to help us do, as far as the bank reconciliation was concerned, was to give us some, create some reporting, correct? Help us develop a process map, I guess is what I'm looking for, the words I'm looking for.
And they've done that already?
They're going to do, once they deliver the training, then the end result will be, they will provide us with that documentation.
How does a process map help?
It's not really a process map, it's they're gonna help us develop our procedure manual. I'm sorry, procedure manual.
Okay. So the consultant, the remaining deliverables are a procedure manual?
And the training, and the in-person training related to the cash reconciliation.
Okay.
Because they're doing other things for us as well, but.
Lee, the policy manual, does that include cross-training requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
It will. And so again, they're gonna assist Treasury as well. They're gonna loop Treasury into that. Because initially it was just our team, but we wanted to loop Treasury in because some of the issues that we're experiencing are being caused by Treasury. And so we try to, help Treasury, but there's still like a slight disconnect. So we wanted them to personally walk Treasury through some of the transactions that they should be posting as well.
Any other questions for Lee? Thank you. That was the best update in my years.
Hopefully we can keep it that way, so.
Thank you. So item D, the annual external auditor pre-planning audit meeting. So again, just as a reminder to the audit committee, our charter currently requires us to oversee the external financial audit for the county. So one of those responsibilities would be to attend the pre-planning meeting with the audit, with Clark Schaefer, the external auditor. So that meeting was held in December 20th of 2022 at 1 o'clock, and all audit committee members are present. So I just want to have this reflected in the minutes. That's why it's on the topic. Just an additional discussion point here. So everybody received an email a couple days ago from Monica regarding some additional audit work that I believe it's the Auditor State's Office that's doing on pension payments from the county. If I understand the document, that's just a normal audit that they do on selected governmental entities. So nothing out of the ordinary. They're just.
No, it's just a report that they have to send to council and the county executive, as well as the audit committee, anybody responsible that has responsibility for oversight in those areas of risk. So it was that report, and there was one other one that was sent to you a couple of weeks ago. So a couple of days ago, I sent one to you. There was like a little bit of both, I think me, you, and the council's office, like we misunderstood. They
yeah.
sent out two reports, and they wanted us to forward them out to our respective bodies. We just didn't realize that there were two separate reports. So it's just really an FYI, and it's just, a nice thing to remind us that this committee should be getting audit reports as it relates to anybody that's audited for the county, so that you can see how risk is effectively being mitigated through those audit reports.
But
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So firsthand experience, because we just finished one in my public entity. Both pension systems, police and fire pension just finished ours. They did a census audit to ensure that the proper members were in the pension system. We were withholding properly, paying properly, and they're about to do one for OPERS. They're required to do that. That's outside of the regular audit process. And typically, the auditor of state has done those, or the pension system itself will do it. But it's completely outside the scope of the normal annual audit. And they call it a census audit, just to ensure that the proper members are in those pension systems.
So is that what's being proposed to be done here at the county?
It was done.
It was
So what
done,
what
okay.
you got was the actual,
No, they're in the
Oh.
process.
oh, it wasn't done yet,
Yeah, they're
sorry.
in the process of
Okay.
doing it now. So they've, I think they're scheduled to come in next, actually, it's exactly what you said, Sal. So they're scheduled to come in, and we provided them some preliminary documents, but they're gonna actually come on site to review all the records. I think well, they should be here this week, actually. What's today? I'm sorry, next week. So they will be coming in, doing exactly what you stated. And it's actually the auditor of state coming in on behalf of OPERS. So it won't be OPERS, it's the auditors of state coming in.
Is it the first time that that's been done here at Cuyahoga County?
Since I've been here, yes.
Okay. And so I'm assuming when the work is done and a report is issued, it'll come to the audit committee?
Correct, it'll
members?
go out to the same folks. Mhm.
All right. Any other questions on that topic? Okay. So item E, the audit jurisdictional subcommittee. So again, this is a project that the audit committee has been dealing with for a while. I mean, really, what is the authority of the audit committee and the internal audit department to conduct audits here at the county? Certainly there's some charter language there that, you know, we've received an interpretation on from the county prosecutor's office that some of us agree with, some of us don't agree with the opinion. So I will always say that, Mark, sorry, in regards to this particular topic. But we're currently following the guidance of the prosecutor's office in regards to that. So what ultimately, exists is kind of just a listing of gray area county-related or, county-affiliated organizations. And so at the audit committee, at the pre-planning meeting, I believe it was Sal had asked Clark Schaefer, was there an ability for Clark Schaefer to kind of go through that list of what I'm calling the gray areas and provide some additional information that may help, at least with some level of comfort regarding risk management associated with those entities. So I thought Clark Schaefer did a great job in identifying all those areas, identifying for the audit committee whether or not they were truly part of the county's reporting entity, and as a result being included within the scope of the audit for Clark Schaefer as it pertains to the county. And ultimately for some of us who might be curious, exactly how is that classified here within the county? Because depending upon what type of a fund that the entity is classified in, may identify whether or not there's more specific focus from the external auditors on that particular organization. Or if it was not part of the county's reporting entity, are those entities actually audited and by whom? So I think for the most part, it was determined that really pretty much all those entities are actually in some form or fashion audited. Again, an audit is done for a particular purpose, which is not necessarily coinciding with what an internal audit department would be doing. So I guess I'm hoping that that's kind of the last item, at least for this particular topic as it pertains to the audit committee. I do think, as we're going to talk about further on the agenda, this whole issue of jurisdiction or expectations by the citizens of Cuyahoga County as it pertains to the work of the internal audit department and the audit committee, I'm hoping is going to be potentially handled as we discussed any proposed changes to the charter. Because it goes back, I think, a little bit to maybe what was expected by the citizens of Cuyahoga County as they had approved the charter, and maybe the way that the charter is being interpreted. So, but we'll discuss that further on. But for us, for purposes of future meetings, I'm going to suggest we remove this audit jurisdictional subcommittee topic, if that's okay with the rest of the members. The guy went checked off. The guy went checked. We almost got the bank reconciliation checked off the list too. All right. So if there's no further comments, so that goes now to item F. So this is the recommendation for revision to the charter. So again, my brief summary on this, and I'll certainly turn this over to Monica for more information. There's really two things that we are trying to potentially resolve through a revision to the charter, and that is this jurisdictional issue that I just talked about before. So, well, that's it. So the jurisdictional issue and that language that's within the charter that's maybe being interpreted one way by the prosecutor's office, which may or may not be appropriate, or the best language would be the better way of saying that. And then ultimately, this whole accessibility to work papers and access to records, which is considered to be a kind of a best practice as it pertains to audit committees and internal audit processes. So we had asked Monica to come up with the first draft of the proposed charter language. I believe that's been shared with Mark.
Yes, it has.
And hopefully feedback has either been provided or maybe left alone based upon it being more of a policy issue. I'm not sure the position of the prosecutor's office on that, so.
I'll let Mark tell you the position. We did provide it to him, and they had no recommended feedback for this document itself.
That's correct. Our office isn't giving any, our office doesn't have any position on this. It's more of a policy call that the commission should take up with the Charter Review Committee and the council and the voters.
Okay. So this is, I'm considering this to be
Mr. Chair,
kind of.
can I just add to that? I mean, that makes sense, because if we were really considering a charter amendment, we would go through our law department. The prosecutor's office wouldn't be writing the legislation. The executive or council would be utilizing the law department. So from the prosecutor's standpoint, I agree with their approach on this. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just on the point, that is kind of why I brought that up earlier with the law department. I agree with the approach too, and appreciate the prosecutor's office point of view on this. Thanks.
So I'm considering this to be the first draft, and I don't know how you want to go about presenting this, and then I guess to the audit committee, I don't know how we want to go about discussing it, but I guess we could figure that out after maybe. Okay.
Can I just ask again, just I don't know how long I can use new person question, but.
Couple years.
Is that right? I'll take it. So, thank you. But from an overall framing perspective of getting to charter change, there is obviously this, the cycles of charter review that's very formalized. My personal opinion is that they're too long, the periods between. But I won't call this ad hoc, this is whatever the right wording is for something that happens interim to that period, and this is why I probably ought to talk further with the law department. Have we seen, I'm going to just ask anybody who's had experience with this around the table, have we seen precedent for interim charter changes between that cycle of formal charter review? I'm for it. I just wanted to ask if we've seen it or if this is precedent. Does anybody know as a starting point?
We've seen it. It's, I think, one time
Okay.
on executive, maybe twice.
Okay.
And that was in the second or third year of the new government.
Okay.
So we had one charter review pretty quickly, 1 year into the government, which I think was a little too soon.
Okay, yeah.
But mostly, I would say, the way council, at least council has been operating, they've relied on the Charter Review Commission.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean.
And currently, that commission convenes on what cycle? Trevor, if I could just keep asking you a question because you got the history of this.
County executive, I believe it is in 2027.
Which would be a follow-up from 17?
Yes.
Okay, so the decennial cycle. So
That's when the charter review, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
That's when they meet. They usually meet over a year, and
Yeah.
then they go to the ballot the following year.
The following year. Yeah, they
So-
would convene, and I believe in 2027, if I have my dates right, for 2018.
So
Or
again,
for 2028.
Ballot item in 28, gotcha.
it's sort of like strategic planning that, you know, we've seen these plans that are 10-plus year plans, but life moves faster within those 10 years, and you recognize change is needed faster than that. So I'm just trying to frame it that we have a formal review process with a review commission, and there are matters that probably between the decades we want to take up sooner than a decade, perhaps like this one. What I'm trying to understand is kind of the precedent setting of that, and I'll go back with the reference that Trevor made to our law department. Again, come at this in the spirit of making change faster, but the other thing I wanted to say, just to kind of perhaps new guy, and maybe I'm just trying to apply the best that I have in common sense on this, is also if we go out to the voters, which is where this could go, do we bundle a number of items, you know, from other department initiatives together, interim to that 10-year period, or does that confuse things? And then in that spirit, the third thing is, as I see all this language, first draft, the entire issue of what ends up on ballots is a very serious matter, right? Because there's been, unfortunately, in other places, such you know, deviation from what we're really trying to get at by the way things get worded on the ballot. But I would, you know, encourage all of us to get to a point of simplicity. I'm sure that's probably pretty logical. Whatever we do, make it simple if we go there. And then I think backing up 3 steps, we should probably review how we do this in the context of that 10-year process. Again, somebody that's for doing something interim to that process because life moves faster than a decade in terms of needs of change. But secondly, are we going to bundle with anything else because there is a cost to going on the ballot? And third, how do you simplify to the point of taking a lot of language and getting it to a point where people understand what they're voting on? Thanks.
That is an important point. My experience with charter changes that they are expensive. The notification process is. So, you know, we don't have jurisdiction over this, but bundling together certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Right. On our particular changes, again, to keep it simple, like Chris just mentioned, so my experience has been that we try to keep the language as broad and simple in the charter, and then ask the legislative body to come up with the more nitty-gritty. So it can also be changed quicker than having to go through charter. So just from my read of this, even originally before the changes were presented, there's a lot of detail in here, and I'm just wondering if it can be encapsulated in a paragraph, everything, with the authority to give to the county council to come up with the detail based on the recommendation of the audit committee. And I don't,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and I see Monica smiling, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, so.
This is probably another question for Trevor, but maybe the county executive. To me, it's impractical to try to push this ahead of the process that exists for charter amendment, unless there is bundling. I just can't imagine the cost benefit to the county of something so narrow going on its own. But is there anything that can be done either in an ordinance that could be passed by council or executive order along the lines of not changing the charter, but perhaps clarifying what's intended here that Monica has drafted? Is there any, and we've tried the route of getting interpretation through the prosecutor's office, but is there a legislative opportunity short of going to the voters?
If recollection, we've had these talks before, and Trevor has presented options, but those options were not really as feasible, really. I mean, and even the one that we currently have in place, which was to help us get past our conformity with standards, where the executive issued an order, you will find, we'll talk about later, is not doing its job. So, you guys just tell me. I mean, honestly, our work is really being impacted by this. I have spent a significant amount of time. My staff has as well. It has brought up, honestly, a level of frustration in us accomplishing our jobs when we have to basically beg and plead to get the information that we need because people don't understand our authority to have it.
One thing, that, to the three previous points, I think we certainly would, if this body would like, we would certainly speak with council leadership. I mean, we have a great open dialogue all the time on many matters. We could do that. I obviously want to be sensitive to the prosecutor's office, and I'm not personally taking a position on this yet, but my point about the cycles is, cycles are, 10 years is a long time. Good to know that we've got less than 5 years just serendipitously to the next charter process. So by the time we queue some of these things up and bundle, you know, we might just be getting there, slow as things sometimes go. But I would be glad, to Monica's point, to take things up with Council President Jones and further discuss how to practically move some of these matters forward.
Mr. Chair, if I can add, I think we looked at the legislative route, but I believe our law department recommended, because of the language that's in here, there's limited options that I think codifying an ordinance would allow more flexibility with the internal audit department. So I think that, to what the director said, I don't think that was the recommended route, because there wasn't able, we weren't able to do much with an ordinance. I would caution such significant number of changes in a charter amendment only because if we're too wordy, we might regret that down the road because it might have unintended consequences. I would probably recommend we look at more of the Inspector General language and similar to what council did for the Inspector General, we then codified I guess, enhancing the charter language. So I would probably lean towards, if we're going to do anything, go that route. I probably would lean towards waiting, though, only because we have a lot of things that go on the ballot at different times, and including our Health and Human Services levy and other items. And I just am always a little weary when we start changing the charter, start talking about changing the charter, because I don't want the confusion to the voters and stuff. So, I mean, if we want to maybe have a discussion about the Charter Review Commission maybe meeting more often or not, but that would also require a charter change, so.
And now we're getting into like a generally good government conversation, but it all relates. That's kind of where my head was taking me, is that the real matter is the Charter Review Commission is probably, it's a long lag in 10 years, so that's exactly where I was heading. But as far as helping the immediate matter at hand, again, 27 is closer than 33, but I understand we got complexity that we've got to address pretty quickly.
So let me suggest this to the committee. So I mean, I do think that from where we stand right now as a committee and the Internal Audit Department, and because of the interpretations that we have gotten regarding the language in the current charter, that we do need to adopt, or at least as a committee, I do think we need to approve something that we believe is the right language for the charter based upon at least what we think should be the way that the committee and the Internal Audit Department should be able to operate here within the county. And so I do think I'd like to be able to propose, and not this meeting, obviously, and there needs to be some work done on this, I think, based upon the comments that have been provided, but sometime between now and maybe a year from now, we should have a draft of language that I think as a committee we should be formally approving. And then it's ultimately up to the decision makers here at the county, you know, if they want to take that language forward and when. Because I think, you know, based upon the experience that we now have, we are probably the right body to draft at least what we think is the right language here for the county, obviously for approval by the decision makers. And then in the interim, going back to the county executive comments, I mean, some of the challenges that we have been having that have caused us to come to the point of revising the charter could be resolved through, you know, Monica's bringing issues to your attention, where Kate's attention, and Catherine's attention, where we're not actually getting the information that we need to allow us to do the work that we believe that we're responsible for doing based upon the charter. And so that's been a past relationship that's been established. When it gets to a certain point, you know, usually I think starting with Catherine and then bringing it up to the county executive level. And hopefully you know, while we're, you know, in this interim period, that's where I think some assistance can be provided. And then if the responsibility would ultimately fall on the county council, well, then that would be the same role that we would ask maybe Trevor to play in helping us do what we're supposed to be doing. So that's my suggestion. My suggestion is we kind of go down both paths. We come up ultimately through some summarized language that meets the intention of what we're trying to accomplish, and we maybe put together a little task force of folks to work on that. Certainly need to get the law department involved with that. I do also agree that the language is, you know, it's just too long, I think, for a charter. And it's hard, but it's going to be hard, you know, it's going to be, you know, difficult, but in some level of creativity to figure out how to streamline it a bit. And in knowing if the county council is open to approving some codification to it, similar to the Inspector General's office, that maybe we look at that.
I may be mistaken, but I think I recall in a previous discussion on this topic, we went looking for the minutes of the Charter Commission to get clarification on something. I can't remember what it was anymore. And I had the sense from that while that was not the charter, it was interpretive. And so what I'm wondering is, because I too felt, I've got notes all over here about condensing the language. If we could condense the language, but get ultimately into the minutes of the Charter Commission, what some of the more detailed issues of why we have these concerns, it might serve as a good roadmap in the future. Maybe a way to get our cake and eat it too.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the internal audits, there are no minutes of the original group that got together to create the original charter language, so that doesn't exist. And I don't believe, I'd have to look, I don't think they looked at any language related to the internal audit section in 2017, because the time that the internal audit section was amended, that was council-driven to change the makeup of the voting members of the board.
I'm really talking prospectively, not using anything currently in existence to help our problem.
Yeah, I don't think we have any minutes that would be helpful for this.
Yeah, understood.
So I did meet with and reach out to and talk to a couple of members of the chartering committee, one of which was Bill Mason. What I got from those members basically was that there was really no thought specifically as to the language relative for internal audit. They just simply took what was there for Summit County, put it over. They wanted to minimize the amount of revisions to that because it had already been litigated. So they wanted to minimize their legal exposure and challenges. So they didn't change very much from summits. What you see before you, it took a lot of time to try to even get it to this level and meet what is required for us to be able to do our jobs. I looked at charters from several different places, codes, municipal codes from several different places. And, certainly I will, can go back to the drawing board and do this again. But the one thing I will say is that the Association of Level Government Orders, they have a templative charter for this purpose of when you're chartering, and to put this in your charter, not so much your code, but your charter. That language is even longer than this. And so what I tried to do is excerpt out just the necessary information that was recommended by that body for language that would ensure that we have access to records, that we can do our jobs free of bias, or, so that we can be independent and objective, and as well as having the authority to do the work. Those are the three key critical things that we have to do. I think what has to be considered is what type of internal audit department the county wants. If you want one that is truly an independent body, these things are necessary, and it's in compliance with professional standards. The recommended language here, I can work on, but I will tell you that just as Trevor said, when you put something in here later on down the road, it can be used against you. But when you don't put something in here later on down the road, it can be used against you too, because it says, well, that's not what it says, and it's very open to, which is kind of some of what we're dealing with now. Well, it doesn't really say that you can do this. So that's why I really tried to keep what was there, but just add the specific language that was recommended by the Association of Local Government Auditors. The other thing that I did, which probably adds a little bit more here, is we had the executive order, and I basically took a lot of what was in the executive order as it relates to access to records and personal and people, as well as giving protective measures. I'm not sure, I'm not a legal person, so definitely working with the legal department would be very helpful. But one of the things, I think, if you don't have it in a charter and you put it in the code, and the code is established by the council, you may not have the authority, which I think there's some limitations in your authority, Alexa. But can you get that information from anybody in the county, not just the executive agencies? But that would be it.
But to add to that, I mean, that's pretty much it. She has the same limitations in essence that the internal audit does. She can't go investigate the prosecutor's office in other areas. So, correct, Alexa?
Alexa, if you want to. Sure. Thank you.
Good morning, Alexa Beeler, Inspector General. So our jurisdiction extends to the county entities as created by the charter. So if it's in the charter, we would have jurisdiction over them. The prosecutor's office is in the charter, but it's not created by the charter. So we have never, our agency has historically never investigated anything with the prosecutor's office. However, the county ethics code requires that the county ethics code requires that the prosecutor's office abides by the county ethics code, which they do. They take our training, and as far as I know, they are held to that.
That was just an example, but the Adams Board, Metro Health, and others, just I want to be clear for the committee, you don't have authority over them.
I would argue that we could, because we are contracting with them. we have authority over county contractors, and that's also in the code. I'm sorry, in the charter and code, but our jurisdiction extends to, per the charter, county employees, elected officials, what it calls appointees, what the code calls board members, and then anybody doing business with the county, which the code calls contractors.
So right now, if you get a complaint from a Metro Health employee, you have jurisdiction.
As far as it relates to the contract, but not a certain Metro Health employee,
Right,
no.
that's what, yeah, related
I'm
to our
sorry,
contract
okay.
with them, but generally speaking, you do not have jurisdiction.
Correct. Over the employees of Metro Health, no. Over anything pertaining to the contract, any documents we would need to inspect related to the contract, and anything that may be, untoward going on there, we would have jurisdiction over, but no, not a Metro Health employee.
I want to kind of, thank you very much. We'll see you in a couple minutes. So I just want to kind of put this topic to rest for this particular meeting. So, so again, my suggestion to the committee is we have a great starting point for what I think is something that the audit committee should be approving. And if everybody's in agreement with that on the audit committee, then we could then just ask Monica to, as best as you can, and I know, you and I have talked about this, to streamline this, and, be a little creative, because ultimately what we approve has to then be approved by the county leadership to take, and the charter review committee to take to the county voters. So, whatever you can do.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna need some legal assistance.
Yeah, and I was just gonna, Mr. Chair, if I may, was just gonna weigh in on this. This conversation has been, I thought, very educational for me, but I'm sure for everybody. We'll do just that. I think my mind, well, you're talking about a year to get the finesse down to language that will be simple and clear. There's a lot of other balls that get juggled along with that, but thinking forward to now what we have in hand, which is the 27 review, or review 227. One, I think we will, to your point, Monica, get more legal assistance to you. It will interface with the prosecutor's office, with the law department, and what I'd like to also do, and I'll work with my team, is get active the Charter Review Commission such that it's not activated in the ninth inning of the proverbial game, So we're probably in like the fifth inning here anyways, and get them active and interface to the extent, I'll check with legal if that's all appropriate, but would seem to me this is a good test case for a lot of things, of language that's on the horizon to change, to simplify county business and clarify, and having law department working also with prosecutor, working with the review commission themselves, we'll get at it.
Absolutely.
And my request to the members of the audit committee is, if you have, so in your understanding of what we're trying to accomplish based upon the change to the charter, if you have any feedback now on the draft, provide it to Monica now. So she's starting with something that incorporates all the thoughts. So my only comment on it, as I read it, is it's just too long. And that's not much help, but as far as but the content there and what we're trying to accomplish based upon the language that's here, I think is I agree with, at least.
I'm full of metaphors today, but somebody used this metaphor of a funnel the other day. We're at the top of the funnel with a lot of language, and it's got to get down through a clear, concise, pithy point. That's this process, I think.
Okay.
So we don't need any formal action on this one, and thanks for putting together the draft. So kind of go through some of these items quickly. So item G, Monica already talked about this. So we've received the report comments, the management letter comments. Lee did an update for us at our last meeting about all of the comments other than that from the IT department. You have a written response from the members in IT. So unless there's any questions, I'm going to go on to the next item. So item 10A, so this is a responsibility of the audit committee to ensure that the leadership within internal audit has gone through their process to confirm independence of their personnel. So,
And we have nothing to report.
okay, fantastic. So item 10B, so this is something similar that we have incorporated for the public members of the audit committee, that we complete the independence forms. So I think Both Sal and I have, and I think Keith is waiting to get reappointed to.
Correct. No sense having him do something that he's not obligated to do right now. So yes, and
If you'd like to send it to me and have it in the file, I'm sure.
yeah, I have it ready. It's just got to hit send.
Volunteer on top of your volunteerism.
So yeah, my understanding is that all have been submitted. Remember, just as a reminder, this process changed a little bit about 2 years ago, and that information now goes to the Inspector General. I have talked with the Inspector General, and she has received all documents, and there were no areas of concern.
And a new member gets appointed, you'll give them the form?
Oh, absolutely. We'll give them the form. We'll give them the full orientation.
Okay, fantastic. Item C, the Director of Audit Annual Performance. So this is the meeting where we formally approve the goals that the Director has established for herself. I'm assuming, Monica, you've done something similar for your staff. Maybe you can talk about that just real quickly, as also in addition to going through your goals.
Sure. So these goals are not just for me personally, but they are department goals. So they're kind of one and the same. And once these are approved, the performance goals of the various individuals within the department, they do their performance goals to support in some way these goals. They are pretty much the same as prior year, with one change. We have a serve in excellence goal. So we're now able, we have over the past year really solidified our surveying process in order to obtain feedback from the people in which we perform services for on an engagement basis. We have added for that a servant excellence goal where we obtain positive feedback from process owners for each engagement in our key stakeholders annually, as evidenced by achieving ratings other than disagree or strongly disagree on 70% of our feedback received. Now, that seems like a low bar, 70%. And I had one audit committee member, thank you, Keith, actually say that to me, and that was deliberate. As you can see right now, we seem to be in an environment where and I think it's more of a lack of understanding. So there's education that we have to do on a part, but then also people are just kind of stretched for resources right now, and anything that they can do to push off an audit, they will. So it's a little bit of an, I won't say adversarial, but it's not as friendly as it has been, or what I would like it to be, I'll say, in terms of us doing some of these audits. We are facing sometimes significant pushback. Not all, but definitely. So I didn't want my team to be penalized because we're in there auditing somebody that really doesn't want to be audited. The other thing is it's a new process, and we're working on trying to get feedback, but we don't get a whole lot of feedback from people. And we want them to know that we want to do better, we want to do differently. So, just even in us kind of saying, hey, and one more thing, we know you did all this other work, and one more thing, give us a survey. Not sure how that'll play on them. So I think if we start off with 70%, but the goal I would want in terms of excellence is at least an 85% to 90% positive feedback ratio. But I figured we start there, given the current environment that the team is operating in. All of the other goals have pretty much remained the same.
Mr. Chairman, Monica, the feedback, when we do get it back, do we know who it's coming from?
It's anonymous.
Okay.
Unless they want to be made known.
Okay. Yeah, there's usually hesitance to give feedback to auditors when they're coming back next year. So.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, surveys and have an advantage in that it's a metric that it's something you can measure.
Right.
But I'm hearing something a little different, which is perhaps we need to have a goal educating our customers, call them clients, customers, on our processes and the benefits of collaboration. And I'm wondering if you thought, although that's not measurable, but having, and you may be doing it anyways, but having that as a goal, and perhaps out of the success of that kind of initiative, pushing back the measurable a year.
So we have been, since I've been in this position, I have been educating as we go through audits. And with great success, I have been educating, but I just can't get to people. We can definitely, there's definitely some internal projects that we have that we want to beef up more. The reason why I did not put that as a goal, and I put this is the measurable part, right? Because we want to make our goals smart, and that is very difficult to measure. I can give some more thought to that and see how perhaps we can capture what I've been doing. We have, like, as we go through, I know HHS, we went through HHS, kind of kept hitting them with a lot of audits, and now they are definitely aware and have actually said to us, wow, and some of our feedback that we've gotten, this was great. We didn't realize the benefit it brought, and we're glad we did this. That has been some of the comments back to us. Josh, you've been working very hard on this surveys. Would you like to kind of put some thought to this to see how we can maybe quantify that? Or would you like to give feedback on the surveys themselves?
Thank you. Yeah, the surveys themselves are good. They are anonymous. However, with it being sent to a limited number of people per an audit, it's not really that anonymous. So if we send it to 3 people from one audit, we know it's one of those 3. So that's kind of maybe a factor for keeping it anonymous. Now, my general thought is most people don't really take the time to give positive feedback. It's usually if you're upset about something, you're angry, you want to give that negative feedback. So that's real quick to come. But the positive is less likely. As to how we can increase that, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure we could sit down and.
Yeah, I mean, education is key. I'll give some thought to how we can try to quantify what I've been doing. One of the things that is, and this is actually here, where I say develop cohesive relationships throughout the organization and rapport with council members as determined by. One of those is receipt of requests for assistance. So that's definitely a measurement or something that helps us to see how well we're being received is, the request. Like I was just on the phone with the Veteran Service Commission yesterday, and they have requested work from us, as a result of my conversation and something that I've been working with Leon relative to an emerging risk here, and made them aware of the services that we can provide. So I am doing that. How we can quantify that, I'll have to work on.
Okay, so you're looking for us to formally approve these goals?
Yeah, typically you formally approve, but if you'd like to reserve that to next time, I mean, I'm going to be working on doing this irrespective, of whether you approve or not. And we'll just see what we can do to bring back another goal as per what Keith is indicating for educating.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve the goals as presented.
You don't want to wait to consider any revisions that Monica might consider? Just approve them that you want to give a.
Doesn't sound like there's going to be anything significant. But if you're, I could rescind the motion if you have some reason to wait. I'm okay with waiting also. Just wanted to dispense with business so we can keep moving.
Good idea with that. I'm okay. Approving it now? Okay.
can change it too if we need to.
Yeah, always could change it, and I will definitely, like I said, I'm doing that now, just how to measure that. I'll have to spend some thought and time on, but that is one of my goals, is to always educate and to ensure that people know we're here and why we're here.
Did you make a formal motion?
I did.
Okay. Second. Okay, so all in favor of approving the goals as presented by Monica, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So yeah, if you, between now and the next meeting, if you decide to make modifications, we'll just bring it back, we can approve those. Okay, so item D, the schedule update to council. So very just quickly on this one. So we do internal audit produces kind of an annual report that reflects what's been accomplished by the audit committee as well as what's been accomplished by the internal audit department. Monica sends it to the audit committee for our review. And then ultimately, she schedules, with Trevor's help, an oral presentation to council on that report. So this is just, what do we, why is that on the agenda?
Well, we keep this on the agenda so that we keep it before you. It becomes a follow-up item, and when it happens, we report out. So you will actually get the report prior to next meeting is the way we've normally done it. You'll get the report that I'm going to be presenting to council. You approve that report, and then at the subsequent meeting, hopefully we've had our meeting with council and I report out on how that meeting went and were there any follow-up items relative to that meeting.
Okay. Any other questions on this one, this topic? Okay. So item E, the presentation from the Office of the Inspector General. So, just a couple comments from me. There's always been kind of a conversation, a question regarding the role of the Inspector General's office and how that particular role may interface with the internal audit role and function. And in past meetings, we've actually asked Mark Griffin, who was Alexa's predecessor, to actually come and present to the audit committee on work that they have done as it pertains also to maybe some work that had been done by the internal audit department. And a lot of that was done actually in the treasurer's office. If you recall, we did a lot of audit reports in regards to the treasurer's office, and Mark's team actually did some additional follow-up work there. So we've actually received presentations before. Alexa is the new Inspector General, and if you recall, Alexa has been here before attending the audit committee meetings as a representative from the law department. So you're very familiar with, I think, what we do, and so now we're gonna find out a little bit about what you do.
Good morning, Alexa Beeler, Inspector General for Cuyahoga County. Good to see everybody again. Welcome, Executive Ronayne. So I am going to be discussing the responsibilities of the Agency of Inspector General. If at any point you have questions, please let me know. So the AIG has two founding documents, the Cuyahoga County Charter and the County Code. The Agency of Inspector General was voted into the charter at Article 15 by the voters in 2018. It establishes the IG as the county's chief ethics officer and grants the Agency of Inspector General broad authority to conduct investigations into possible ethical violations of its employees, elected officials, what it calls appointees, and those doing business with the county. It also states that council may further delineate our powers, responsibilities, duties, which council has. You can see the several code sections that council has enacted that further detail our responsibilities. Section 20401 just provides for the overall mandate of the agency. Title 4 contains the county's ethics code. The next three are found in the contracting title of the code. 50119 governs contractor registrations. 50121 empowers us to inspect the county's contracting and procurement process. And Chapter 505 contains the county debarment code. So do I just press the, let's see. Oh, that's a pointer. Here we go. Okay, so on this slide, I tried to pull from our founding documents all of our mandates. And I tried to organize them into three broad categories. The first one goes over our responsibilities before there is an act. So before there is any questionable conduct, those are our responsibilities. That middle section deals with once an act has been committed or an alleged act has been committed. And then the final column details our responsibilities with regards to our contractors. So for the guidance and outreach section, this is before there is an act in question. So a big part of what we do is we opine on ethics inquiries. So of course, a big part of promoting a culture of ethical compliance is guiding employees before they act to ensure that their proposed conduct comports with ethics laws. The county has its own ethics code, and in our ethics code, it incorporates the 3 Ohio Revised Code sections that make up state ethics laws. So between those two bodies of rules, there's such topics as conflicts of interest, prohibited interests in public contract, gifts, supplemental compensation, nepotism, misuse of resources, position. So we encourage employees, if they have any questions of whether their intended conduct would be permissible or prohibited under ethics laws, to reach out to our agency. We also opine on conflict of interest disclosures. So our agency receives 3 different types of disclosures that would fall under that category. If an employee has secondary employment outside of the county that results in earned income required to be reported to the IRS, they must disclose that employment with our agency. Similarly, if an employee, and when I say employee, I also mean elected officials and board members, but if an employee has any type of fiduciary interest with an entity that receives county funding, even if that employee is uncompensated with that other entity, they must disclose that relationship with us as well. Once we receive the disclosures, we determine whether they're compatible, if there's any impermissible conflicts of interest, or there could even be a public contract issue. So then we provide guidance on how they can make sure to stay within ethics laws with those two, their county position and then their outside position. We also receive nepotism statements. So the county's nepotism policy is a relative cannot supervise another relative. So you cannot have 2 relatives in the same chain of command. A relative can also not be a part of any decision to appoint, hire, fire, discipline another relative. So if a county employee has a relative working for the county, they must disclose that relationship to us. We take a look at the org chart, make sure there's no issues there. And then also anytime a county employee has any business interests that are doing business with the county, they need to disclose that relationship to us as well. So we also receive and maintain financial disclosure statements. This is dependent upon an employee's title with the county. Depending on if they hold a certain title, they would be required to file a financial disclosure statement with our agency. These are more the higher level employees. Elected officials are required to file a financial disclosure statement with the state. Our agency retrieves those for all of our elected officials, and we maintain those on file as well. We also provide ethics training. New employees must take ethics training within the first 30 days of employment with the county, and then each year thereafter. And for both, they take the training, they have to pass a quiz, and they have to certify that they agree to be bound by the county ethics code. We are also required to establish a whistleblower hotline, which of course we have. That's prominently displayed on posters throughout our county buildings, on our website, on all of our communications. And the code also states that we must establish a website, and it says to receive online whistleblower complaints, but it's a hub for all of our business. So you can file complaints, make an ethics inquiry, file your disclosures. Our contractors can do their business on the website as well. So moving to the middle column, this is once an alleged act has occurred, we receive and handle whistleblower complaints from any source. There's no wrong way to file a whistleblower complaint, so we have a hotline, the website, people contact us directly, we get letters, we've had an anonymous complaint slipped under our door, and to that end, we do take anonymous complaints, and also if a complainant does identify themselves but wishes to remain confidential, we do protect their confidentiality to the greatest extent permissible by law. And then we investigate alleged violations of the county ethics code, fraud, waste, and abuse, and county contracts. And if during any of our investigations we have a reasonable belief that there was a crime that was committed, we are required to refer that matter to the appropriate law enforcement agency. Yes.
Just a quick question. Off of my recollection, the Auditor State's office also has some type of a whistleblower, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, by the way, but I also thought that they do. Okay. So if somebody reports something to the Auditor State's office, do they report it to you?
So as it would relate to the misconduct of a county official or employee,
I think
I
that's what the
suppose they
whistleblower.
could. They have not in the past, I don't know, 14, 15 months, but they certainly could.
I mean, yeah, I guess, hopefully, huh?
There's no requirement that they'd have to know that we have an IG's office in the first place.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if the Auditor State's Office even knows, if they happen to get something, should they be providing it to you in your role here at the county?
We have referred things to the Auditor of State. So somebody there has seen the return address and letterhead. Do I know whether they would know to send it to us? I'm not sure, but we could
But
make
don't-
sure they do know that that is an avenue.
Is the county responsible for letting county employees know that there's also a Auditor State whistleblower system in place?
New hires are supposed to have that packet, supposed to,
For the Auditor of State whistleblower hotline?
Yeah.
Okay,
along with the ethics, signing off on the Ohio Ethics Commission
okay.
laws.
And I'm not sure what the requirements are for informing the new employees of the auditor's whistleblower hotline. We, of course, inform them during the new employee training of our whistleblower hotline, and they're to reach out to us, which is a requirement that they reach out to us if they know or suspect any wrongdoing.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if that's has the Auditor State's Office ever provided a management letter comment about maybe the county not having adopted the Auditor State's whistleblower policy? Do you remember?
No, but they have tested for that. So Sal is right. So all new hires have to sign some type of documentation saying that they provided the information for the Auditor of State. And then during our annual financial audit, they do a sample testing and ask for the employees' new hire sign-off sheets. So, yeah, so that is part of the new hire training.
It sounds like the county has a great process for the work that you're doing. I don't know if there's just a requirement maybe to link the two, just to let them know that if they happen to get something,
They can send it to
that they
us.
send it, so
Yes.
they know who to send it to in your capacity. I don't know, just a thought, but it sounds like you're busy enough when I look at your statistics, but.
We are
but,
busy, but it's all good. So the third column relates to our responsibilities as they pertain to our contractors and lobbyists. We have the power to inspect the county's contracting and procurement processes, and this includes all stages of the procurement process, from the establishment of bid specifications to RFBs and RFPs and the resulting bids and proposals that are received, as well as, of course, the conduct of our county folks and the contracting party during the process, just to make sure there's no fraud occurring or any other violations of county ethics code. We also register contractors and lobbyists. So if a contractor does more than $10,000 in business with the county annually, unless an exemption applies, that contractor must register with our agency. Registration is a 3-step process for both contractors and lobbyists, which includes a $100 registration fee, and that fee goes to supporting our operations as they relate to the contracting piece of our responsibilities. They are required to submit a registration form, and they're also required to take our ethics training, and that kind of bleeds into the next bullet, which we are required to administer ethics training for contractors and lobbyists. This is very similar to the new employee ethics training, where they're required to pass a quiz and certify that they agree to be bound by our ethics code. It includes additional training on just what is improper, what is an improper way to solicit business from county individuals. We also administer the county's debarment code. The debarment code is found in section 505 of the county code, and that just lays out a process for our agency to debar any contractors that are engaged in poor business practices or unethical conduct. Depending on the reason for debarment, a contractor can be debarred for 18 months, 3 years, or 5 years, and during any period of debarment, they would not be able to contract with the county, submit bids or proposals, or serve as a subcontractor on any county contract. And then we are also required to publish the contractor and lobbyist lists, which we of course do. So any registered contractors or lobbyists are published on our website, as well as the debarred contractors.
I have a question too on that.
Yes.
So So on professional service agreements or requests for proposal processes that ultimately lead into what I'm calling a professional services agreement, where there's a lot more judgment that's allowed to be exercised in the selection of the vendor, other than if it's a bidding, where you're actually just,
Right,
evaluating.
providing an amount.
Do you have the authority to review whether or not the evaluation process was done appropriately? I don't know what the terminology is.
Yes, and actually, we did have, based on a complaint we received last year, we did review a process for a contract that was awarded based on an RFP that was put out, proposal submitted, and what we did there was we just made sure that the scores that each of the vendors received were reasonable based on their proposals. And that was what we wanted to determine there. It's not, we're not part of the review committee, but we just wanted to make sure that they were reasonable based on the proposals that were received. In that case, they were. But, and that was actually from a public complaint. It was from a member of the public that was aggrieved. Actually, it was one of, now that I'm remembering more details, it was an individual that did not receive the contract. We get a lot of complaints from similarly situated individuals.
So you did that one because it was brought to your attention, but do you do that just as do you just do a sampling of, blank number of them every year, just
We don't right now. There are a lot of other things that we are planning on doing as far as the procurement and contracting process. We just have been trying to get through a lot of, the work that the agency does and establish our own processes and everything, so.
Alexa, did you say $10,000?
Yes.
They have to go through the registration and the training.
Yes, and that registration is good for 4 years from the December 31st of the year that they register.
Okay. Has that discouraged vendors from doing business with the county?
Well, I know, funny you should ask that.
Okay.
Yes. So this is the contract with, I forget the other vendor's name, Walter? Okay. We did run into an issue that I was aware of there. That's the only issue that I know that ultimately has made a department steer away from registration. We have had contractors be resistant to registering, but they ultimately, all of those ones have ultimately registered. Unfortunately, Walters, they did not ultimately register. We do have the ability, so there are statutorily provided exemptions that council has set out. The code also gives the Agency of Inspector General the ability to seek additional exemptions. They have to do so with Board of Control approval. And then if a proposed exemption does not receive both the IG's approval and the Board of Control's approval, then they can take the issue to council if they so choose. We do have, we have exemptions in place. I was not willing to offer an exemption to that particular contract, even though I do feel for your situation. A contractor not wanting to register because it was, if I provided that for them, I'd have to extend that to others, and I don't know that the Board of Control would agree.
Understand. I just wanted to see if it was a problem countywide, and it doesn't sound like it is.
Not that I know of. Now, could it be a discouragement on the front end? Perhaps. But as far as the issues that have come to me, they've all resolved except for this one.
What we have found, and I think this is just anecdotally, we haven't really done any studies or data, but we've gotten feedback that some vendors that have a better pricing structure are not selected at times because they don't want to register. And so through that process, they have to go with a different vendor. And I know that was actually a scenario that was told to me that Mike Chambers experienced in his role in the Public Works Department on several occasions that he expressed frustration about. So it happens, but it's more upfront. They probably aren't aware of it because they just select somebody else. But there are instances where this does not result in the lowest cost to the county because the vendor with the lowest cost refuses to register.
Are there any more questions before? Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay, so here I just wanted to give a representative example of what we do in a half-year period. These are our figures from last half, so July 1 to December 31 of 2022. You'll see we received 86 whistleblower complaints. This is on the higher end of normal. Historically, our agency has received anywhere between 39 and 88 whistleblower complaints in a half. So this is, so we're definitely receiving complaints, which is great. That's what we want to have happen. We initiated 27 investigations. So clearly there is a screening process that we have in place. We call it triage, where we just make sure that any complaint that comes in would be appropriately investigated by our agency. If not, we try to direct the complaint to the appropriate agency to handle the allegations. We completed 53 investigations. This is far higher than normal. Our historical semi-annual average is 23 completed investigations in a half. Last half we completed, like I said, 53. The half before that was 52. These higher figures are just due to our very focused effort on getting through some of the aged matters that were in existence when I came on board in early 2022. And I'm very pleased to report that we are through them and we are current, which is a wonderful feeling. We also issued 92 ethics opinions, which is a record high. Historically, we have always received somewhere between 15 and 74 ethics inquiries in a half-year period. And I think that it's due to just a perfect storm of there was an election, so people had a lot of questions regarding political activity. There was a new administration coming on board, so I think people were worried and reaching out about future employment. And our ethics training for 2022, we tried to make it very comprehensive, and that sparked a lot of questions. So we were very excited about the 92 ethics opinions. We want people to reach out to us. That's great that they're trying to act within ethics laws. So we received and handled 180 secondary employment disclosures. We reviewed 26 nepotism disclosures. We registered 258 contractors. This brings our total number of registered contractors up to 1,730. And we debarred 5 contractors, each for 3 years. And that's all I have.
And
so
I have a question.
Yes.
That I think would be pertinent to this committee. Can you talk a little bit about accountability in terms of your work? Who are you accountable to? I know you send something out annually to council, but who else reviews your work and to what extent?
So we report out twice a year. We issue semi-annual reports. We present those reports to the Council Operations, Intergovernmental Relations, and Regional Transportation Committee, and receive any feedback and questions there. Also, it is my plan to be peer-reviewed in '24 by the Association of Inspectors General. That's something that per Green Book is recommended periodically, preferably every 3 years. We've never been peer-reviewed, so my plan is to get to be peer-reviewed in '24.
So you mentioned Green Book.
Yes.
Previously, I think you guys were using Blue Book, right? I think, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you've.
Not under me, I don't
Yeah, no,
believe.
we've had a
Okay.
conversation.
Yes,
And,
early.
and Green Book is definitely a great, it's more of the contemporary method that's being used by most IG offices across. So, and that organization is a wonderful one, the one that produces those standards. So to get the peer review, that's looking forward to seeing that
All
peer
right.
review.
Yes.
And that is, kind of brings us to kind of where one of the reasons I think Alexa was asked to come here was we had this question about our peer review, right? Our peer review suggested that we definitely should be looking at ethics on an annual basis. And look at more governance items, which it, you know, the IG has definitely a bearing on. And so if you like, I can wait to that part to discuss the ethics audit as it relates to this, or would you like me to kind of do that now?
You mean you want to jump around the agenda a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just think it's, since you're hearing the presentation, you can kind of hear why it would be necessary for internal audit to perform some work around what the Inspector General's office does. Now, that may change, given that if you're going to be getting a peer review, that may change to some degree depending on what that peer review does. Maybe we could just rely upon that and review that peer review as part of our responsibility to look at ethics. But as it stands right now, without a peer review, in looking at this, there are definitely gaps to assurance that's provided over the work that the IG's office does. So a couple of times, a couple of meetings back, I gave you guys a document that talked about the 3 lines of defense. That is very pertinent in the work that we do and how you look at an organization's governance processes. You have the first level of defense, which is management level. They're actually the ones on the front line performing the controls, doing the transactions. Then you have a second level, which is normally your compliance level, where they're kind of a monitoring function. So compliance is kind of what Alexa and her team does in some areas where they're going and they're checking on the work that others do within the county to ensure that. Then you have your assurance, your last line of defense. That is typically internal audit. We are the last line of defense. When you look at, if you go back, take me back to her guidance and outreach enforcement, contract and lobbyists. When you look at the body of work that they do, there are certain items that they do as a frontline defense, first line, transaction level, but there's no review. There's no assurance provided to the body of stakeholders, the public, relative to the work that they do. Some of those areas are around the ethics. Now, the PRC performs by the code, I think it was, in some of the charter. They do perform an assurance function on some of the ethics work that the IG does, but it's very limited. They will look to see that the whistleblower hotline has been posted. However, they do not look at the administration of the whistleblower hotline, which is very pertinent and important to see that whistleblower complaints are being accepted, that they are being followed up in a timely manner, and that they are being resolved. That's a huge risk to the organization as it relates to fraud, as it relates to litigation that may come from other various issues. So people will definitely go through the complaint road first, and if they don't get what they need, they will resort to litigation. So, but there's no coverage provided at all relative to the work over whistleblower. From an assurance perspective, not telling them what to do, but just are they providing the proper coverage and the assurance with the whistleblower. There's also the training. So the PRC does look at training, but it's only for certain employees. It's the executive employees only. So the other people where it's required to be training, like the vendors, all of that, PRC does not provide any assurance over that. The attestation of the receipt of policy in terms of making sure that the people who are supposed to receive policies, again, the PRC looks at that, but very limited, only to the agency. So no elected officials, and making sure the appointees get what they need. No one's looking at that to make sure that the county is covered from a risk perspective, that everyone that should be aware of ethics, the good work that they're doing, that is actually happening. And so that's where the work comes in for us, is in providing assurance. If we were to provide assurance according to what our professional standards body is saying, as well as, you know, what we believe is our level of assurance, we would leverage anything that's currently out there. There's no sense in us doing work that's already there, and that's why I'll be looking forward to seeing what, you know, you get from a peer review. If someone else is doing it, then we can simply gain coverage in that area of our work by looking at what they do and just making sure that any issues and follow-ups are done appropriately and timely. But we can't escape the responsibility from a professional standards perspective of actually doing the work of providing assurance. So even if it's going and saying someone else is doing it, they did what they, the assurance was provided and the follow-up was done, check the box, audit committee, everything was done appropriately as it relates to assurance, or everything was done appropriately as it relates to any second line work that they're doing, or definitely any first line work that they're doing. So that is the reason for the ethics audit recommendation on the audit plan.
Question with regard to the reference to first line work. I'm wondering if in some of these matters, maybe contracting, ethics, conflicts of interest, if the department in which the work, in which the employee and the activity is going on really isn't the first line.
They're not.
As a supervisor, I would think I have a responsibility for the ethics of my employees. If I'm involved in letting contracts, I have a responsibility for knowing all the criteria around those prospective contractors. So I'm just curious, Alexa, do you agree with the characterization of your first line there, or not?
So first line as it would relate to, for instance, how we handle ethics inquiries or the whistleblower hotline, I can see Monica's point. I mean, we are doing the work, so I suppose that we could be
There's
like
no one else doing the work.
There's no one else doing the work. So I can see how we would be characterized as providing first line work. As far as management, I'm not quite clear what you mean by as far as management. I mean, yes, management in a different department would provide the first line work for their roles, but do you mean as it would relate to something of an ethical violation that's brought up with our agency?
If you're perfectly comfortable with what Monica has laid out, I don't want to delve deeper. I guess maybe the more general question is there alignment between you and Monica on what role internal audit might play with regard to the IG office?
So I do, like I said, I do see where Monica's coming from, especially with the work that we are performing. If the internal audit wants to audit us, they're welcome to audit us. I'm not sure. It might make more sense once we are peer reviewed. I think that would probably, I mean, I can't tell you all what to do, but that to me might make more sense. We do have oversight from council committee. They're not really looking at our work compared to our policies and procedures. However, a peer review would do that. Through the Association of Inspectors General, they do provide very thorough peer reviews. So I would be confident that that would probably alleviate any necessity to audit our agency, but to be audited if you'd like to audit us.
When would you make a decision if you're going to be peer reviewed or not?
Well, I know that we are going to, I do know that we want to be peer reviewed. I'd probably start looking into making arrangements for that later in this year. I'd like to fully establish things the way that I foresee the agency operating, and then have them come on in probably 24, I would hope to be peer reviewed.
Okay, alrighty. So thanks. We'll get back into this as we discuss improving the audit plan, because right now it's a contingent item, I believe, in the audit plan. So
Okay.
thank you. I know we took a lot of your time
All
today.
right.
And
Have a great day.
Thank you, Alexa.
Mr. Chair, if I can just respond, I mean, I've told Monica this, I just don't see the value in internal auditing the Inspector General. I think both are independent entities that are responsible to, in essence, ensure good government, and I think there are other areas of focus where internal audit can be, and I've been pretty consistent in this. I just don't quite see the benefit of an internal audit of the Inspector General.
all right. So we'll discuss that when we get to that part. Okay, so Monica, you have 20 minutes to get through items F through J. but do your best.
F through J. Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. Light work. Get up the audit plan report. Okay, so we're gonna kind of directing your attention to the 2023 audit plan report. This is a required document that we do each year to talk about the performance relative to the prior year. Also discuss completion on audits. It also presents our new audit plan, so it's kind of a holistic document that will kind of touch on F through H, and then we will talk about I and J really quickly. So I am going to kind of go to page 4, where it talks about the 2022 engagements. Here you have a chart that shows pretty much our, how we measured up to what we said we were going to do per the approved audit plan. And that approved audit plan is with some revisions. There was some approval to change some audits, not many this year. So the DI revised the 2022 audit plan in May of 2022 with approval from the audit committee. There was significant impact to the audit plan due to limitation of some available resources at that time, and that was with the one of the engagements we had. They weren't able to do us until later in the year. So anyway, we did that. So as it results, we had a total of 21 total engagements planned. Just a note here, the issue tracker entails 2 separate reports, and this represents 2 engagements. So on the audit plan, it's just one. We wouldn't repeat it twice. It's just one, but it's actually 2 engagements. We have 2 separate work products that we push out. So out of a total of 21, we released a total of 8. In progress as of January of 2023, there were 5. There was 1 not started. That is actually the ITGC review, which we had a time with the procurement there in terms of going through that procurement process. First time we've done that. I think we'll be more able and apt to do that in the future. We actually had to go back and do a rebid on that. So that engagement did not get started. There were no engagements removed. And there were 5 that were planned and deferred, and those were deferred early on in the process. So just as a reminder, our audit plan that we propose is taken from a risk-based perspective, which is the methodology that we use. It's a cyclical one where we are trying to cover all of our highs every year, our moderates every 2 to 3 years, and our lows at least every 5 years. So that cyclical model, we propose the plan, and then based on resources, we curl it back. That's what we will be doing in a few minutes here. So this was the plan. There were 5 engagements that were deferred, either based upon resources or because the committee felt that based upon the circumstances, that particular audit needed to be deferred. The contingent audit was also put on hold, the ethics one that we have just talked about recently. And then consulting services, there was one, and that one item that was put on hold was the IT implementation review. Well, we need resources for that. And the other thing wasn't just resources, but they were waiting to finish the implementation of the system. They didn't want to use the resources. They needed all hands on deck to implement that last module. So there was no resource that they didn't want to tax the resources with an IT implementation review. Okay. So there we have that. So the released engagements are listed here. There were 2 that were already in progress from prior year. As we said, there were 6 that were planned in that same year that we released. There was no consulting services done. And so that is page 4. Engagements in progress as of January 1st, 2023. We have the, oh, yeah, the Cuyahoga County, we had, I'm thinking about this year, Lord Jesus. I'm ahead. I'm like, that's not where we did, but that's last year. We did do the Cuyahoga County Communication Systems and the Senior Adult Services Contracting Process. Note of significant reference here is we completed, we had a 92% completion rate last year, which is why we only had 2 projects roll over. And one of those projects was because we couldn't do anything due to their resource restrictions into the second quarter of this year. Last year. So that moves me towards performance, and we're talking about performance. So when we talk about percentage of completion, you have a percentage of completion, then you have a current year rate of completion. Let me explain those to you. So the overall percentage of completion will say out of the 21 engagements, how many we actually got done. And so we released 8. So that's, this year our completion rate was 57%. That was significantly due in part to my availability in some regards, as well as some of the issues we've had with obtaining information and having some scope limitations because of such, with 2 of our audits, which are the HR audits, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about the progress. In terms of the current year completion rate, what that rate is for audits that were planned to be done in the current year and were actually completed in the current year. So we're at 50%. Those are not, they did not meet our metrics for our goals. Certainly, we will try to do better, but, life happens. And, I am very engaged in this process with my team, and I will take definitely the accountability for some of this in terms of my lack of availability due to FMLA needs and concerns. As it relates for our resource utilization remains steady and at a normal level within 5% of the maximum achievable rate of 60%. We have proven this out that we cannot, that's the max. We can, with all of the holidays, vacation, training, all of that administrative time that we may spend, 60% is our max achievable rate. We actually were able to get a 58% utilization rate this year. In the area of projects completed, as I talked about, there was a total of 8. The overall audit coverage, Keith, you will be pleased. When I first came on board, this was an area of concern of yours, is how much coverage we were able to get. As you can see, it has significantly increased over the years. We are now at 41% for overall and 67% for our high risk. Now, that is largely in part to some of the ways in which we plan our audits, which we now do some cross-functional audits that touch multiple areas. And so if we're doing one audit that kind of hits various different departments, we can get more coverage. Some focus, what you will have seen over the past is where we have themes where we cover all revenue cycle. And then we'll move, we're still on revenue right now, but then we'll move over to the expenditure. So that gives us more coverage that way. And then nothing can take more pressure off of us than our tracking system, the follow-up that we have implemented in the past 2 years, where we are doing follow-up on all of the items. Instead of doing follow-up audits, we are doing a very contemporary system where we are following up on all issues very much every month and coming up with resolutions. So according to how we are supposed to look and touch areas of risk, this definitely is allows us to get more coverage by covering all of those areas as they relate to follow-up versus just doing 1 or 2 follow-up audits a year. We're covering more with this methodology of how we do our follow-up as for the reports that we have done in previous years. In terms of cycle time, our cycle time has remained steady from prior year at approximately 8 months. What that means is that it takes us from start to finish about 8 months to do an engagement. When you look at the engagements, they are pretty much very large engagements. We're touching whole cycles. And so that makes sense. I think that's a reasonable 8 months. We are getting it done at least in the same year in which we are starting that's what that says, is we don't go really past a current year for most of our projects, and that's excellent, I think. We'll try to get that down as much as possible. Where we do have an area of, where we need to continue improvement, we've made some improvement, but it's in our planning in terms of how many hours we need to do these audits. And most of these are first-time audits. These are areas that we, as you can see, relative to our coverage, we have never covered before. And so they're just, a lot of times it's learning things we don't really know when we scope it out, that certain things exist. We experienced this with the facilities one that we're currently doing, where we found out there's actually a significant amount of wedding revenue that you wouldn't think facilities has, but they rent out a location for weddings, and there is a significant amount of revenue. We didn't account for that when we did it, because we didn't know until we got in there. So we are making definitely measurable progress. I would like to this year do a little bit better. I am still limited though. And you can delegate some things, but if people don't have the bandwidth or if they don't have the expertise that you have, you're not delegating, you are dumping. And so I'm trying to balance, with my team, the ability to delegate those responsibilities I have that may be limited with my availability to those team members that I can do that with. I think we'll definitely show up better than 57%, because one of the things with this was I was out for about a month with COVID. So hopefully we don't have any more COVID instances, but you never know in this day and age. It's a new world.
Monica, I have to encourage you to speed up.
Yes, I'm now to the plan.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm on the 2023 plan. And, this is the crux of our work here, so please just bear with me in terms of being able to get through this. So for the 2023 audit plan, we have presented to you last year. There is a kind of cliff noted one in there for you, but it's the same that's located on page 8. We took into consideration those things that the audit committee wanted us to, in terms of considerations for revising. We revised it. We've put before you this plan here. And based upon the plan, we have estimated that a perfectly risk-based plan would amount to, and I'm on page 12 now, so that you can see, follow me here, 10,650 hours. We don't have 10,650 hours available. If you look at the budget, the audit plan, 2020 audit plan kind of budget that I have in here in terms of hours, you see that we have available project hours of 6,240, and that's only for a staff of 5. So let me explain that. If you look at other audit activities on page 12, that's 1,300 hours. That is mainly my time with the 1,300 hours. I do project time, but my time is not as significant as the staff's time as it relates to audits being performed. So I spend about maybe 30, 40%. The other 60% is, on audit committee support, following up on emerging risks, doing other things. And I actually have been spending a little bit more because our staff, we're doing some complex audits and they need guidance. I don't really charge my time for guiding the staff because that's just time for training pretty much, right? That is administrative time. But I have been coaching them. We've been having some work sessions and things of that nature to kind of go through some of these audits that we're doing that are different than what may have been done in the past. So needless to say, I have proposed a plan that would fit within the resources currently available. The total adjusted hours of that plan is 8,675. And the plan there that is for you to be voted on to approve, there is, you see item 3, as per your request, the jail is being removed or deferred. And the, as stated on page 12, the audit committee has directed that those audits highlighted in orange be removed and considered in a future year. This decision was made in consideration of the significant focus on and scrutiny of jail operations by multiple authorities, as well as the understanding that the resolution of current litigation will result in transformative measures. So that's why we are proposing deferment of the jail operations. And then to meet the resource, we are asking that items 9 and 10, microfilm, criminal justice information sharing, as well as number 12, animal shelter, be removed based upon their risk prioritization. They seem to be the likely ones. Hotel motel was kind of kept because there was a significant interest by multiple stakeholders in us performing that audit. So this is the audit plan that I've put before you for your approval. And if there are any questions, I am ready to hear them. And if you'd like to just vote for approval.
Try not to prolong this. And it's a theme I think I've raised before. The delta between the hours that you would like to have and the hours for which you have resources, about 2,000 hours, roughly 2 FTEs. Do you intend in the next budget submission to make the case for those 2 additional FTEs? I realize that wouldn't impact this audit, but at some point, there's just almost a permanent misalignment between the audit, the risk-based audit philosophy and being able to execute it because of restrained resources.
Excellent question. And I'd like to say that we do have currently in our budget, we are allocated an additional resource and a half, right? That for budget purposes, what we have done and to be in agreement with the executive's office and the request from them to kind of manage our hiring. We have not filled those positions, but we do have FTEs available for a full senior level person, well, actually a staff level person, and then also for an intern. And then we also have a half a position, which was our IT person that we shared with the IG's office. We have that. We recommended and will continue to recommend through this year, potentially next year, that those dollars be used for IT resources, external IT resources, which we don't have in-house. I'm not ready to hire that in-house resource that we would need for IT until we at least get this done and out the way. So yes, we need them. We do have one at least in our budget, and we should, once we get through this IT GC review and other IT projects that come out of that, we should be ready to actually staff up with resources. And of course, if the freeze is lifted on hiring.
So we need a motion to approve the proposed audit plan for 2023.
So moved?
Okay, so all in favor of approving the 2023 audit plan as presented by the director, say aye. Aye. Okay. All right, Monica, you got 5 minutes.
Okay,
Mr.
so.
Chairman, just I apologize, I have a keynote address I got to give at a lunch event. Is it protocol to bring in person to sit in my seat? My next would be our chief operating officer.
As long as Mark doesn't have any.
Yeah, you can designate.
Okay,
that.
all right. Katie, you're up if you've got the time. Thanks. I appreciate, I did, if I may also add, I really appreciate the, just the professionalism of this board and to a person, just the work you're doing. I'm looking forward to joining as an ex officio member and also to our team. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for attending today. Katie, can you stay through executive session by any chance, if we have to stay a little late? I'm not sure we're gonna get,
I have to be out at 12:30.
well, if you can, you're not a voting member, but okay, let's, want to keep going, Monica?
Okay,
I
so,
actually do have one question. On the ERP implementation, and I know we discussed this.
yes, thank you for mentioning that. So, the ERP implementation, that's an external audit that we have been recommending. But in my conversations with Katie, she's actually having this work kind of done right now. The IT department is doing it, kind of a self-review of implementation. And so, based upon what they do, this may, it probably will totally go away, but it's probably going to totally go away based upon some things that are happening relative to decisions that they have to make regarding a new system.
Yes, we'll have to make a decision in the next 2 years whether to upgrade the current system or move to a new system. And if it helps, I could also provide to you the schedule for checks and implementation from the IT department.
Yeah.
So you're thinking of doing potentially swapping out your ERP system? Is that what I?
Well, the thing that, I'm only 3 months in, but the thing that I've found difficult is that we have not rolled out all of the modules that are available to ERP. And as you've seen with the reconciliation, we can't fully be trained until you're up and running on all of the modules. So really kind of pushing that as a priority. It's difficult to assess how ERP is working when all the modules are up and running. So I've been pushing that collectively with all the departments and working collectively with the IT department to get that done. And they're very receptive. So just want to make sure that we're making an informed decision on whether this is working or not.
Okay, as it relates to the status of our current engagements, this status was reported out in our monthly report that I sent out earlier this month. But primarily, we are now, and this just happened yesterday, where we are at another scope limitation as it relates to our HR audits. So we have 2 HR audits for your memory, one relative compliance and one is hiring, retention, and, hiring, retention, and recruitment, hiring, retention, and recruitment. And so we've been asking for information for several months. There's been some concern from the HR department as to whether or not we should have access to this information. Our understanding in the various different discussions that we've had was that, there was some uncomfortability there as to whether or not we should be able to look at this information, and they were going to get legal's opinion given the executive order. What we got yesterday was a memorandum from the HR director basically saying she thinks we need to go back to the drawing board and present to her why we need this information and basically go back. We don't have time to do that. It's just going to be a scope limitation, in my opinion. We have on more than one occasion presented the rationale, the reason why we need this information. We've even said we've tried asking for alternative documentation. They don't have that available. We can't draw a conclusion if we don't have the documentation to do so. So it's just going to be a scope limitation.
So this is HR, not PRC?
This is HR, not PRC.
Monica, when you said you tried offering alternative documentation, what can you elaborate on that a little bit more, please?
So yes, so what we explained to them is that if they had documentation that showed they actually had received and reviewed the background check information, that we could look at that. We wouldn't need the actual background checks. They don't have that. information. And so there's no way, all we have presented to us is an invoice that shows that we paid for background checks, but we have no knowledge about what was done with those background checks, if we even received them, to know that we are in compliance with some of the compliance things, or to know that certain processes per HR policies were actually performed and done. So we can't draw our conclusions onto the work and scope of the work that we're doing without this information. And then, some of this information is just, it's standard. An I-9, that's something that we should be able to get. I don't understand.
I hate to put you on the spot, but is there a chance you could, I don't mind putting you on the spot, by
No,
the way.
it's absolutely fine. Just during this meeting, the law director did send you an email about this
did he?
topic.
Okay.
So they are going to provide you a spreadsheet. I think, there's a debate on whether, who's right or wrong here, and I'm not going to get into that, but I think that the interim HR director, I think in her viewpoint, she was trying to protect the integrity of the hiring process and not put out people's background data that didn't maybe know about that going into it when going through the hiring process. So the law director did meet with the HR crew last night, and they will be providing a spreadsheet to you.
Okay, so hopefully
Paper-
that spreadsheet is one that wasn't just created, because that would not be sufficient.
No. It says,
Okay.
I think that there's paperwork available for you, not a spreadsheet that will aid you in completing your task. That's the last line.
Okay, well, we'll have to
Again,
look again.
You know,
Yeah, I will just say that this deadline has been extended, and I'll let Josh because he's on the day-to-day on this.
Requests for this information started back as early as, November, Tom? Early November, I think, is when this initial request went out. We didn't get any form of, we've continually followed up with, hey, what do you think on this timeline? Until early January. It's when she finally responded and said, I don't want to give this to you. So I personally don't feel as if there should be a restriction on our ability to see these background checks and I-9s. I feel that she just doesn't quite understand the role of internal audit and what that entails. But with that, the spreadsheets that she offered, like Monica said, I hope it's not something that's just now being created. This should have been a tracking spreadsheet that they were using at the time of when they were verifying that these background checks are completed.
Yeah, we've asked a number of times and really have tried to work to find out what else they have. So I'd be very surprised that they have documentation that will resolve this issue other than what we've asked for, because we've been asking and trying to be creative about different ways in which we could perform our work, and was told that nothing was available. So to hear now that something is, hopefully that is the case, but then, it kind of concerns me that this information wasn't brought to our attention 2 months ago.
well, I'd say I'll continue to work with you. I don't want
appreciate that.
the audit committee to feel like there's anything that's being hidden or not available.
Yeah, and I know Catherine has been, she was the audit liaison, and we've brought her into the fold and have been keeping her abreast. I'm not exactly sure of her role right now in helping us to resolve this issue, but we have been following the protocol, just so that the audit committee knows, to loop Catherine in to try to work with them to resolve this before we bring it up to this level. But this continues to push our reporting back.
Monica, I'm sorry, would you feel comfortable if they gave you redacted background
It
report?
depends on what they redact. I don't know what they need.
Because you're just validating that a background check was performed, correct?
Yeah, can I ask you guys to take this outside
Yes.
of this meeting so we
Yeah,
can get
yeah.
through it? So
Okay.
I appreciate your involvement. Hopefully this will resolve the issue so we don't have a scope limitation, which is not, something that's a positive outcome from an audit. But you
Yeah.
want to keep going through this.
So-
But thanks, Lee, for weighing in on that.
So impact, I think our date for release on this, it's been pushed back a couple of times. It's currently at 4/28 is what we're trying to do. If we don't get this resolved sooner, that will be additional pushback, so we'll let you know on that. And then the rest of the items, OBM encumbrance process, we're just trying to follow up again on an issue there that we think we should be able to issue that letter relatively soon. So we should be kind of wrapping up these items that carried over relatively soon and starting on new work. Any questions or concerns? Okay. As it relates to emerging risk, oh, go ahead, question? Okay. As it relates to emerging risk, do want to make you aware that through my participation in meetings with the Clark Schaefer team as they go around and they meet with different entities on IT-related audit stuff, twofold there. One, providing the presence that we were asked to provide to oversee the annual audit and make sure any issues or concerns are raised timely and appropriately to this committee. But then the other one is because we're doing an ITGC review, trying to document what they're getting from these people so that we don't have to go and do rework. So Tom has been added to come in on, not just me, but Tom, so that we can have a representative that documents these, so for use in our ITGC review. And Clark Schaefer has offered to provide us with some of their documentation too. But that being said, in one of those meetings, what came up was an area of risk that I have been talking with Lee about that was identified is that apparently some entities like the Veteran Service Commission have what we call cash equivalents in large amounts in their actual possession. And, you know, and talking with them, the Veteran Service, they have cash equivalents, which are gift cards. And right now on hand, those gift cards are in almost $400,000 of gift cards in a safe in their office. And so we just want to make sure that there's appropriate controls. I'm going to be working with Lee to not just do this for one particular entity, but to try to centralize and make sure that that is managed from a central perspective as to all cash equivalents. One, the knowledge thereof that they exist, and then to make sure that there's appropriate safekeeping, safeguarding around those assets. And I had a very wonderful conversation there. I was very pleasantly surprised with a lot of the things they're doing. But there was, you know, just as a note here to bring to this committee's attention, they did change out their fiscal officer last year. They don't currently have a fiscal officer. Part of that, there was a concern that there was some controls and how the controls were being performed around the safe keeping of those items. And so to address it, that their board was, the director, from my understanding, was the one who identified it, and their board took immediate action. And so they are working now to determine what's the right fiscal presence that they need to have and all of that. And so what they have asked from us is on a consulting basis to come in and help them to consult on what processes and procedures they should put in place. And what I've told them is that I'd like to not do that as a one-off. I'd like to continue working with Lee and have something that can be used throughout the county, not just for one entity.
So any questions to Monica on the emerging risks? Okay. So I want to jump, so it's 10 to 12. Can you stay a little bit longer? Can you stay a little bit? Okay, perfect. All right, so I want to jump back to item 7 on the agenda, which is executive session. So there is a matter that I'd like to convene in executive session. So all meetings of the Cuyahoga County Audit Committee are open to the public under the Ohio Open Meetings Act. However, the committee may go into executive session during a meeting for specifically authorized purposes. During executive session, the committee confers outside of the hearing of the public, but may not make any decisions about any matters in executive session. All final decisions are made in public. The committee will go into executive session this afternoon to consider the employment of a public employee. So is there a motion to go into executive session for that purpose?
So moved.
Second.
Second, so just do a motion, just do a roll call? Have to do a roll call.
Yeah. Calling roll, Michael Abuzarol.
Agree?
Okay, Trevor McLear.
Yes.
Salvador Talarico.
Yes.
Lee Tucker.
No.
Or no? Oh, okay.
No, they're not voting, not voting.
Oh, okay. All right. You're good.
But I want to invite Katie and the attorneys and Brendan.
Well, so all members of the board are allowed to come in to executive session, so you don't have to invite them in. But you have to invite Kate in.
Yeah, Keith
Yeah.
is invited in.
Yeah.
Katie, if you'd like to attend, Billy, if I could ask you to not attend, please.
Oh, so even though she's representing Mike, she's not allowed to attend? Okay.
Is that,
Did Mike, talk to you about attending?
Yeah, I'm attending on his stead. I mean, I come all the time, but I don't sit at the table usually because I'm not,
I mean, it's up to you if you wanna join.
I'll take the guidance of the committee, like, I don't, I'll just let them know.
yeah.
Okay.
I prefer you not attend.
Okay, I'll let them know that
Okay.
you guys can fill him in on whatever he needs to be, if anything. He's not voting anyway, so.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what do we do? Just, so what happens now? Somebody? Thank you. good, okay. So we are reconvening the meeting of the committee, and we're now back on the record. So there's nothing that we're gonna need to vote on coming out of executive session. So item 11, public comment. Anybody from the public want to comment on anything unrelated to the agenda? I guess not. So the next meeting is Thursday, oh, well, yeah.
Asking for an extension?
Although we might change that meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to extend the director's remote work. I wouldn't go through all the way, I would just, to get us through the next meeting, so through June 30th, I think it's June 30th. Actually, just in case we move it, I would, to the end of July.
I'll second that.
So all in favor of approving the extension for FMLA through June 30th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. So again,
I think he said July 30th.
Yeah, July.
what did I say?
Only with the concern of picking a date that works for everyone in June. I just don't want it be June or July 8th and Monica doesn't, is stuck, so that's why I'm giving. I hope we can pick a date within those 7 weeks.
Okay, did I say June 30th? Oh, I'm sorry, through July 30th. All right, so next meeting we talked about, we're probably gonna reschedule that. So we are formally adjourned. Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All right, so all in favor of adjourning an hour, 40 minutes late, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, thank you.
No, 40 minutes. 40, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, until 12.
Little secret, Mike, I think most of us probably put the extra hour on our calendars anyhow.